Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
and inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. In this episode of the Software People Stories, my guest is Mario Lewis, a manufacturing specialist turned IT expert with over 35 years of experience. He talks about his career that began far away from software in mechanical engineering, manufacturing, operations, and quality, and eventually finding its way into the software services world. We talk about what manufacturing can teach software teams, why domain knowledge and business understanding matter, how to stay adaptable through career transitions, and Mario's experiment with AI-assisted software development through Project Klyve. It's a thoughtful conversation about learning, reinvention, and doing meaningful work, even when the path is unexpected. Listen on. Hi, Mario. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hi, Shivguru. Thank you. I feel privileged to be on this podcast series.
I think this is also one of those conversations that has been waiting to happen for a while, because we've been having some other conversations in a different channel, but then not really got to know each other a little better. But this time, I thought we'll focus on your story.
Okay.
And if you can start with your origin story, how you got associated with IT, what has been your career trajectory, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. So, yeah. I'm actually, by education, I'm a mechanical engineer, not a software qualified person, in terms of degrees and all that. And I didn't even want to be a mechanical engineer. Actually, when I was growing up, I had a very strong passion for everything in aviation, in the business of flying, in the operations management of airports, global air routes, and then a huge, passion for aeronautics engineering and everything about it, including flying, right? So I used to read a lot and I wanted to study it, but when time came, my family kind of discouraged that and said, no, that's too, back then it was, there were very few jobs and all that, and they were looking at things like that, and they said, why don't you do mechanical engineering? And so that's what I did, and I also thought, mechanical is it's a nice broad-based kind of thing that leaves the doors open for many other sciences.
Right.
And I sort of developed an interest in manufacturing, the manufacturing part of that whole discipline, industrial engineering, and particularly optimization of supply chain, manufacturing operations, along, of course, with manufacturing techniques, all the things that you do in a workshop. Those are my favorite subjects. And, after that, I went for a business administration degree in which I focused further on this side of industrial engineering, manufacturing optimization, quantitative methods and decision support and all that kind of stuff, operations research, that side of management. And my first several years in work were in manufacturing.
Okay.
And I was very fortunate actually that I think in terms of timing, when I entered the workforce, and this was in India, there was not much in terms of computing back then. I did, during my master's studies, I did have to learn Fortran programming so that I could work with operations research problems. I did a thesis in that area. And then, but actually when we entered, the business environment, there was no data. And so there was, we, but I was lucky because in the beginning, I worked as a planning engineer, a trainee, in an environment that was, they had just developed an MRP2 system for
Okay.
manufacturing planning, sort of, the precursor of ERP. And the best part of it was there was no network, cabling and stuff. So we had to physically, copy data into floppies and exchange them between the various modules of the system before we could run the planning engine. And so I had to do all that. So, but not from an IT perspective. I was doing it as a manufacturing planning engineer. But it perfectly complemented what I already knew about the subject, and I got a very deep understanding of the data and application side of it. And then in my next job, which was again very fortunate, this was the around 1990, 1991 sort of time frame when India was just beginning to liberalize the economy, and I worked in a kind of, it was a startup, but not in the current sense of the word. It was a company that was Indian, with Indian founders who had a very strong background in machine tools and machine tool technology, and they started their own company to indigenously design and manufacture CNC machines for various purposes, some special purposes and some, turning and stuff like that. And, that the nature of that business, it's capital intensive, it involves R&D, and it's a very hardcore branch and application of engineering, and different types come together. There's mechanical, there's industrial, there's electronics, and some software in the machine and all that. Now, why the timing was fortunate was because when liberalization was announced and it began, so the founders of the company said, look, we are now, the country is going to start receiving imports from the best manufacturers of such machines in the world, right? From the Far East, Japan, and then Europe, there was Germany, in America, there was the US. And, what's going to happen to us once this happens? So we have two options. You either give up and shut down and stop investing money, or we have to transform the way we manufacture our machines, which meant, one was, of course, in product design, and all the engineers had to produce or adapt all their machines to global specifications. But on a lot of it was on transformation of the business of manufacturing. We had to optimize. We had to severely, make everything more competitive by improving quality, offer, good pricing, and a great product, and therefore be able to offer a good product at a better price. And there were other things, in terms of being ready for a global competition. So in my role, I was, assisting the top leadership in conceiving, what we could do, which areas, how should we go about it, and things like that. And so I got this. I think there were a few other companies in manufacturing in India which also were in the same boat, and they. So within a certain community, known community, there were various initiatives that began to improve quality and then to bring in process improvements, through ISO 9001. That's where I first saw it. And I was, I attended sort of workshops with, the first company that, the lead assessor, lead implementer of the first company that got it in India. And I came back and, I had to lead it for my company. And at the same time, I had to, I was given all this stuff to read about how the Japanese did it and total quality management and Kanban, just in time, and the elimination of waste, Kaizen. ISO 9001 was a part of it. And then there was on the operations side, so we had to, how we manage the shop flow, how we manage inventory, how we manage throughput. And there was this fantastic book I read at the time called The Goal, by Eliyahu Goldratt and Jeff Cox, right? Best-selling, very well-known book, which, the things that I picked up in that so greatly simplified everything that I already knew. And these were things that stayed with me forever throughout my career. They still do. So then, while doing all that, we did have to also, start computerizing certain things in a new way. And, till then, I was this guy, here and there in different departments. And people knew that we didn't have an IT department, but people knew that, this guy, he knows something about programming and applications and all. So they used to call me for various ad hoc engineering related applications especially where, some kind of statistical analysis was involved. So like, for example, they wanted something for very quickly calculating and graphing upper and lower control limits for a new machine that had been manufactured, and how well it would cut and all that stuff. So I used to do that. And then there was also, there was this early drive to start using computers for inventory management, for purchase management, vendor management, shop flow planning, scheduling, and all. And that's where I said, look, you can do it better if you integrate all these, and if we can put in some kind of OR thinking, at least into certain things. Start with job flow scheduling, which was very complex in that environment. So, I was doing that, and then somehow, again, I was the only guy who, everybody else was just in manufacturing and design and all that. They, when they said computerization, everybody looked at me and said, "This is one guy, he has to do everything." So that everything meant I was getting into hardware and maintaining the hardware and understanding all of it, how to take a whole system apart, put it back together, replace parts that went bad. I was, this was just a support function in this company. So for them, it was not a big deal. And I was happy to learn. I used to spend all my money on books. And that is how I picked up a lot of this. And then, how to move data around, and then gotten a network, and then, started developing all these applications one by one. And it was really busy. And but again, I think the key thing here for me, neither the company nor I really looked at it as software engineering as a discipline, or IT as a discipline. It was all about a huge business problem that had to be solved, And then it broke down into, functional problems in every area of the company. And then, okay, what do we do? What do we need? What do you need? And then finally, I'm doing some software which nobody really, they were not bothered about how I was doing it or where I was doing it, but they just needed the output. Um, so then, I was doing so much of that, and after many years, it's great work content, but no money. So I mean, this is a reality in manufacturing, especially back then. It's not nothing about our company. It's the state of the industry, and that's how it was. So I thought, people told me there's this thing called software companies, and they can not only help you go abroad, but and earn more money, but also, you can continue working on these problems and all that. So I thought, okay, I didn't know anything about what these companies did. I started applying, and eventually, I got into software. So and I was a complete fish out of water because while I knew something about all of it, I didn't do it in the way that they did, with the formal, disciplined processes and a very different kind of business and office environment. It's a totally different industry, different work culture, and so I just thought, okay, it's another thing I have to learn, start, and get into it, and move with it. So that happened. And it just, one thing, I just kept at it. I realized early on, let's see, I wasn't all that interested in software technology. But then, from my own intuition, I felt that, look, if you want to really understand this industry and the business and the operations and what the people are doing and everything else about it, you have to, you can't be in this industry and say, I don't want to know about software, right? So I started doing that, and um, I wanted to do it properly. This is one of the things I believe in. And, so that took me from one thing to another. It's just a little bit of technology, but mostly my view was always very operational. That there's a problem to be solved. How do we do it? These are the people, the resources we have. How do we get it out? Yes, you'll have technology problems that become your constraints sometimes, and depending on what you're working on and all that, everything you eventually get it done. And so that was my career. I went through various types of deliveries and projects and technologies and on-site, offshore, this, that, the works, development, maintenance and support. Um, and then we went to outsourcing larger deals. But then at some point, for many reasons, and I felt, okay, I've done enough of this, and I wanted to apply my own experience, the breadth of it, depth of it, in a more focused way. Yeah, so when I got into services, uh, I think I said it already. I had to, learn everything about the industry, the company I was in, what they did, how things worked, how people worked with each other, how processes came together, what technologies they worked on, and what do you mean by, reaching a professional level in working with these technologies and the professional methods applied. It was all very new, and I learned by doing. It's or by watching other people, or by listening here and there to conversations and directions and everything else. And I think it's the grounding, the foundation of work values that I learned in manufacturing that helped me deal with software and other industry, survive in it, and get it right. Because actually, I would credit manufacturing for most of my foundational lessons about career. about opportunity, and then everything else about operations, about quality, a whole lot of things. Because there's a very different paradigm working in an industry that was capital intensive and you with long range planning and very tight um, how they measure the risk and take measured bets that deliver over years, versus something that's relatively faster because you're in terms of throughput that you start. It doesn't matter whether the project is maybe a long one and all, but you're still the outlook is different. You're managing cash flow on a month by month basis. All that kind of thing. It's sort of different ball game. So it was a learning, but then the discipline to do that, the respect for processes and organization, and some of these things I got from manufacturing, and I brought them here, um, including coming to work on time in the morning. So uh, which I found was quite rare in the office environment. Of course, I understood it, and I understood why it works differently. But still, I couldn't let go of my old habits, and so all good. And I went forward from there to get into different types of project delivery models and different types of technology. Um, So that just keeps evolving. You move with that until one day I came out of the large company format. I went into smaller units where I thought I could build something for somebody else, and I did that for a while, a long time, and then tried working on my own as a consultant, but again got back into small companies and then deep into technology because it's a small company. Until finally it was time to call it quits on my career and retire. So that was it in a nutshell. So it was like an accident in software, but then um, that's just I chose to get into it, and I recognize that you have to, if you want to do something, do it properly, do it well, put everything you've got into it, and compete. Don't be afraid to compete with the best, of guys who have maybe got better pedigree and academic qualifications and all that, but still it's at a certain point, there's a lot in it that's new for everybody, and I think that's the opportunity. So that's how I looked at it, and I think it went okay.
Yeah, wonderful. I think there is a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
I also have some exposure to manufacturing and interestingly aviation. I mean, not in that, at least from how airports work and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So probably we'll talk about it sometime.
Sure.
But it's so complex and so many different things that all happen. For instance, one of the aspects was about managing the locks in an airport. How complex it could be.
Exactly. It's quite fascinating. Every part of it, every part of that whole industry.
Mhm.
And there's also, one of the reasons I got exposed to it was because of the operations research thing, where when I had to do my thesis, one of the problems that, candidate problems I could have taken was in a large airline, international airline. And well, I didn't do it in the end because it was too big for the time I had available.
Okay.
But, I learned, oh, there's so much you can do.
Yeah, a couple of things which triggered my curiosity are, yes, compared to the process rigor that you said you learned in manufacturing, and also the planning horizons.
Yeah.
Right? So how easy or difficult was it to shift to a software environment where you did mention a couple of things about being on time and all that? So fitting into that kind of a the culture?
Um, it was difficult uh, initially, not later. I mean, I got used to it, but it was difficult because everything about the two worlds was so different.
Mm.
In I was working in a factory, right, and in the outskirts of the city, where I had a long commute every day to get there on my two-wheeler. See, as I said, the cost structure of that industry is very different. Salaries are a lot lower, um, which means that the society you work with, it's of a different economic sort of level, and that drives behavior. It also it does influence your professional interactions to some extent. Manufacturing is more hierarchical and regimented. And I guess it needs to be that way when you've got this mix of a lot of blue collar workers and also the white collar, the engineers and everybody, and you all have to work shoulder to shoulder um, throughout, and everybody's got the work ethic, the aspirations, and how there are stricter norms in the shop floor that we had to be there for example 8:15 in the morning. We had to clock in, and if you were more than, I think it was 10 minutes late, you get a half day deducted, right? And I was coming from very far away, so I had to wake up really early in the morning, 6 days a week, do the ride, which I would pool with another guy to save on fuel bills. And then, make sure you get there by 8:15, 8:20, whatever, and you start your day. Then you go through you walk around in that hot thing where you've got iron filings in the air that go up your nose. You've got, the sand from the foundry. You've got paint fumes coming from the paint booth. You've got all kinds of shavings flying around from different machines. There's, a lot of safety norms also applicable, all physical stuff, right? And you lift weights and you carry them around, because you don't get the crane for everything. That's only for the large things. And it's a different environment. You don't think about. I didn't think about it because I started in it. I didn't think that there were other kinds of environments possible. But then when I came to software, wow, it's all offices. The AC is on throughout the day. Nice, cool, fresh air. And I'd come in like so early every day. The cleaning staff was still at it, doing their job, and there was nobody inside. People would start trickling in, and I was like, don't you guys have, don't we have office timings? Why don't people come in on time? So, but then, I mean, like I said, I understood how it's a different thing. I can't compare and say this is better than that, or it's just different worlds. It runs on different economics, different people management principles. We're all white collar in software. And the way you have to, uh, put together your deliveries is very different. We are not inventing the technology here. It's already a given. We had, in software, in services, we learn how to apply it. And then we learn how to work with it and you bring in the layer of processes and management that enables you at the end of the day to target the same things, which is improve quality, trap and eliminate your defects early on in the cycle. And you get the best out of everyone. But you have to keep all of them happy, and you work with different people to get it all done. So it's fundamentally it's these are similarities, but how you go about it and the culture is obviously different. The exposure is different. So yeah, it took me time, but then that is something I managed because I am fairly adaptable. And I think it's a trait that has helped me throughout my career. That things change, everything changes.
Yeah.
It keeps changing, and what you can manage is how you respond to all that change, and you have a choice. You can adapt and continue on your merry way, or you can sit in a corner and complain about it and be left behind. The choice is yours.
Mm.
So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So my question is about the other side. Based on your experience, and particularly with the software companies growing, and then the need to have people coming in from other industries and so on, what can teams or companies do to enable this integration into, let's say, the software culture smoother or faster?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. And see, there's what I wish we could have, and also the realities of the business, which I understood and which I thought, okay, we don't do it, because there's always a reason. So anyway, the company I joined in software, they did have this kind of program where you kind of bring in all the new entrants together, and we're all we're mixed backgrounds, mixed whatever.
Okay.
And it is meant to be an introduction into the new environment. It seems to have a focus on technologies, which was something I really, it was very useful for me. But there was also a little bit of a cultural element to it, because you do get exposed to, you observe, it's like you get some time to observe this environment around you before you actually go and participate in it as a full-time, worker in that space. So that was there, but I think, there was not enough record. See, nobody asked me, what do you know? What do you already know, right? What do you know? I think, see, when I saw ISO 9001 come into the software industry, I felt, deja vu. It's like, hey, I've been there, done that. But then I thought that everybody within the company thought that, or they seemed to think that this was something that was totally new, not just to them, but to the whole world, which was not the case. And but nobody really asked, does anyone know about this already? Nobody asked, what have you seen and done, and what are your thoughts on how any of that could be borrowed here? Nor did they ask, that, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Do you think we could do it any differently? Which is another way of, you don't have to ask, what have you done before, but you just invite ideas. And so on the whole, I felt that this was not, I never experienced this in software, ever. Maybe to some extent it was because of how fast everything moves. So because systems are put in place fairly quickly. It's just that I think, and maybe this is more of a thing in services, that I hate using the terminology like this, because it sounds kind of like a put down, but it's not. It's just me using manufacturing and operations terms. In services, people are the inventory, right? We can outside you say that they are the capital, but really they are the inventory. And so once I started looking at the industry like that, everything became so much easier in terms of dealing with it, interacting with it, engaging with it, and my expectations of what I would get out of it. Because there's only a very, very thin layer at the top that is non-inventory. They're the people managing the business, and everybody else is inventory. You have to be. I mean, that's the business, right? And it taught me so many things. My conversations with senior leaders about why can't we verticalize our knowledge better. environment, if not the company, the environment around you projects the horizontal part, the technology as being the most important thing. But for me, that was rarely the most important thing in my mind. I always thought, see, it's a business. I mean, the customer, it comes to you because they have a business problem. And yes, they may have defined a solution and they just want you to implement it for them. That's one part of it. Or it could be that they have a business problem. They don't know the solution and they ask you to, you know, uh, figure one out, maybe in conjunction with them, maybe with a mix of whatever. I mean, it depends. It depends on the project, right? So I would always look at technology as being a hygiene factor. I mean, it's there. This is what you work with, right? It's like when you're in manufacturing. Again, so just my experience, but when you come in with your basic experience and ability, your skills to work with certain materials, to design, to that's the hygiene stuff. Strength of materials and how do you get different um, behaviors in steel, for example, and how do you work with iron castings. Um, these are all. This is horizontal, but what you're actually doing is building some high tech machines that cost a lot of money, and the customer is not going to just take it blindly and pay the bill and go away. The acceptance process could take months. It's over here. I would say that, see, you're bringing in the technology is already there. It's been proven in more developed markets, right? It's invented there in the first place. It's developed over there, and they've shown how to work with it, how to apply it, how to use it. We have to learn to do that to um, put something together that solves a problem. Now, you can learn the part about putting it together because that gets commoditized very quickly. You come in with your basic knowledge of programming and all that, and you say, okay, here's another language, and here are all the adapters and tools and libraries and frameworks and what have you around it that make your life easier. And things have gotten more and more that way since the days when I began. Where a language was a handful of words and a few brackets and braces, and then you build a whole ERP out of this. So versus now you've got so many open source libraries and tools and architectural paradigms, design paradigms that are given to you. You plug them logically together in your mind, then you do the work physically. But I always felt that greater value. Greater value. It's not that there's no value in that, but the greater value could come from building your domain knowledge, your understanding of the problems, how they were solved earlier, how you could solve them, what are the possibilities in the future, and so much expertise, which could save you so much time in requirements gathering, business analysis, and things like that. If you came with not just a starting strength, knowledge of that, but also the attitude, that I've come here, okay, I understand your business, I understand your industry to some extent, of course. I understand the economics of your business. What's the problem you want to solve? Now let's look at it. Versus you go there and say, okay, tell me what you want. And then you leave it to the customer to spell everything out, and then you work on the technology part of it and say everything. So again, see, I'm not going to generalize this. There is it's a continuum where there are companies that have everything. They do all of it, and some of it which are purely technology implementers. There's a spectrum, right? So I'm talking about. I started in the flat, technology spectrum space. And I was, because of my background of coming from business first. Uh, Technology is your enabler if you're interested in figuring it out, right? Coming from that, I was always in a big hurry to, can we get on with it? Like,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
we have to give this so much importance? But yeah, I mean, you do have to give it some importance because you have to put it together, and there are people to do that, and it's nobody's fault that I'm the misfit. So, and that is the word I use. I always felt like a misfit. You
So,
know?
see, we normally talk about innovations,
Hmm.
incremental or breakthrough, and breakthrough typically coming from applying some orthogonal concepts from one
Yeah.
industry to another.
Hmm.
So, with your experience and also the interest in manufacturing, and very specifically, let's say how supply chains are managed,
Hmm.
including the partners, they're coming together, making sure that everything falls in place, everything is in time, and all that. We see that increasingly the non-trivial software solutions also use a lot of components, right? And which are probably evolving at their own pace. They could be open source, they could be proprietary, whatever. So,
Right.
if do you think there is a possibility to reimagine the SDLC or the typical way in which software is being developed today and getting integrated and tested? Are there things that we can learn from manufacturing?
Um, I think uh, yes and no. I mean, see again, they're two different things. But yes, I think manufacturing was ahead already on the curve because it already had gone through so much of evolution in terms of configuring how you put things to, your teams together and your work processes together to achieve what is, a better outcome. I think, see, because by I don't know, 95, when I actually joined the formal software industry, I'd already seen manufacturing having reached, the stage of flexible cells
Hmm.
and things like that, right? And early experiments with robots, which are a different thing, but for them, it's a huge,
Yeah.
risk of capital outlay to do all that so early. Um, but here, I think it has happened. I don't think it's not happening, and it may not have been. It's not the drivers are not have not come from borrowing knowledge from any other industry. The drivers have come from IT itself. The customer comes to you because maybe they want something done better and faster. Usually, it's like that.
Hmm.
So when you give it to them, they'll come back and say that okay, in the next cycle we want it still better and faster, and IT has evolved like that. You're doing it until everything has to be done yesterday,
Hmm.
right? And so I think our work processes we've moved from waterfall to very agile, which is carving out the work into smaller pieces for the sake of risk avoidance and risk management and make things work and demonstrate that it works before you go on to the next piece. And so we have done that. It has come down. Now, can it go even further? Yes, of course. It's happening again. It because um, what I felt, and again, this is only limited to my own experience, but as automation increases, people are sort of, to some extent, losing sight of the SDLC because um, it seems like you can jump from requirements to testable software in one step,
Hmm.
right? Which you can do that, but you may not like the outcome or in terms of it could be extremely buggy, it could be extremely incomplete in the insights. It could give you a lot of unexpected results in logical flow and all sorts of things, right? So then when that happens, then then you look back and say, how do we, or how do we fix this? So ultimately, you go back to the fundamentals. So I think the question is, how productively can we still stick to the fundamentals? How can we do that? And I think companies eventually do settle down in some way, which is their own internal process. It's not that everything will be a mess. I mean, if that was the case, there would be no industry. The industry is there. Um, it's evolving more in so many ways, shapes, forms. So I think all this is down there. And I do think we are reaching a stage, or we've reached a stage with GCCs and all, where to me, GCCs is like a big recognition that the domain knowledge is so important, because it's the GCCs who are coming to invest on a long-term basis, where they know that it's going to take years and years to really get that domain understanding down to such a fine-tuned level that uh, see what you have, what is called tacit knowledge. You now have it in that building. It's not all documented very neatly in explicit words and sentences, but it's there in the air in that building. People know things that may not be written down, and they are not known outside of that building. And I think that is there. That's an evolution. So there, if you say, then how do they do software? I'm sure they're still producing excellent working software. It's just that uh, uh, they don't have as big a focus on just that part alone anymore, but they are focusing. So it's like a redistribution of the mental effort and scope. So I think that that answers your question, because I think fundamentally all businesses are doing the same thing in the biggest sense: maximum revenue, maximum profit, and optimize cost.
So, though you didn't explicitly mention it, I do have a question on your Project Klyve. How did that come about, and then what?
Yeah, Project Klyve was completely unplanned.
For our listeners, if you just say what that is.
Okay, Klyve, it was an attempt to use a chatbot and agentic software almost completely to build a complete application. A full application which has a proper coherent architecture, which is of my choosing, and which executes, it delivers a business value of my specification to my specification, um, just like a small software company would, right? So, and this was, spanning a lot of the year 2025. How I got into it, it's there. I open sourced it, so it's there for anyone to take the code and play around with it. There's lots that can be done with it further. Um, so where it started was, as I was approaching my retirement date, to come out of work. See, I was thinking, with what I what I know and all that, I would like to build something that uh, I could give to the world, free. Okay, just put it out there. It's an application. I don't want money from it. I just want it to be available to everybody to solve a problem. And I was actually thinking of something in the travel space, not surprisingly. And I wanted to embed a lot of operations research in it,
Okay.
to solve certain problems in travel planning and airline routing and a whole bunch of things to put forward, perfect personal itinerary and all that. I didn't know at the time that the LLMs were very close to being able to do that in a chat, right? I thought, I was thinking more, can you have an app which is not cloud backed, which runs in the mobile. So you have a problem solver that is so small that it fits in your mobile. So it's all running on your mobile, and you can whip it out and use it anywhere, that sort of thing. And I had heard so much about chatbots and AI coding. I mean, I was using chatbots in the office already for many things, and applying my own AI as a part of work, but not with LLM. It was actually other stuff. So I thought, and since it's not a business venture, I don't want to invest money in it. I thought that I could use an LLM to code the whole thing for me, and then when I started, I found nothing worked. There were all kinds of problems. So one was problems that prevented the app itself from being developed. There was no reference data available for free and all that. But I zoomed in on the part about how do you build the app using just AI. So that intrigued me. I wanted, because I wanted to make it work. I could see that it could write complete functions and so on, pieces of code perfectly. But you couldn't go very far. So it started there, and I started working with that until I figured out a way where the manual process I kept refining until implemented that manual process as part of the application so that it could run on its own. And that's what it was doing. So that's how. So once I started, and I could see at the back, the LLMs were continuously getting more sophisticated. There are new releases, practically fixes at least every week. It just became something that I was determined to finish. I wanted to finish it, and I finished it. And that was, it is just an experience. I did it. I put it out there, and then that's it. It's done. Of course, I mean, there are so many other things that have happened.
So have you thought of documenting the learnings that you had in developing Klyve, both from the engineering perspective as well as how do you go about creating a solution and being maybe industry ready?
Yeah. So I've done a little bit of that in the form of, kind of articles that I started writing after that. I posted on Substack. I did some and then stopped. But there's also, along with the software, I also released, some of the work instructions and stuff that I had used. They're self-explanatory. The entire architecture and design is there in the open source site at GitHub. And along with that, what are the kinds of instructions I would give the LLM? It's pretty much, and then in one of my articles, I wrote, what needs to be done to take this thing further, right? This software, how to make it more, because right now it can only do very small applications. Right? It's meant to run on, your local desktop or laptop. It won't sneak off into the internet other than to the LLM. It's fairly so things like security, see that I mean there are a few things that I observed, but I didn't really document much because by now a lot of things are already documented and put out there in the public domain by people who are still passionately pursuing such issues in their careers. So I felt there's I think today, if I were to repeat, because that AI coding has been moving so fast. So today, if I talk about my learnings to anyone, they probably have already read all of it before. Whether or not they're in the right context, I don't know. But I'm sure that when they start applying, they'll very quickly find out, and they'll be able to move forward with no issues. To understand what's practical, what's possible, and even if it's possible, is it advisable?
Okay, yeah.
uh, things like that.
So we'll definitely include a reference to your GitHub repo in the show notes so that whoever is interested can probably look at it and get some
Okay,
inspiration.
okay, I can
Uh,
send those to you.
yeah. So one question, one of my favorite questions actually that I ask all my guests is about career tips for two segments of people. Now, one, those who are considering a career in IT now. And the second is those who may be facing a kind of a midlife or a mid-career, uh, not necessarily a crisis, a confusion, or saying that what should I do, how should I
Yeah,
go, should I change lines, or etc. What would your thoughts be for them?
I think for the people who are just starting out, um, the technology space has grown so large. It can be very daunting and confusing and I've seen this, they're wondering, where do I start?
Mm.
What should I pursue? So today, some of the loudest noise in the media is about AI. So does that mean that you drop everything and just chase AI? You hear a bit about semiconductors and possibilities there, and then um, with that is this word VLSI, which parents have not heard, you know, and so they get worried. I actually had someone who asked me, my daughter, um, she's taken up VLSI engineering in a good college, and but I thought that AI should be, that's what it's where the buzz is. I'm so worried about her future and all that. And I said, look, I don't want to start explaining all this, but don't worry. If VLSI, she's actually better off than somebody in AI. At least that's my opinion. And at the very worst, don't worry
Mm.
because either way, it's fine. What I would say to a person who's starting out is that you go and read all this stuff is fine, but get your fundamentals right. Focus on the fundamentals. Whatever you learned in your 4 years of university and maybe 2 years of masters and whatever, don't ever get into this rut of thinking that none of it was relevant and that there's a huge gap between industry and university, which is another thing you hear all the time, and that everything you learn is irrelevant, and that when you get in, only then you'll start learning. I would say that is utter rubbish. uh, I think you have to get your fundamentals right, and that's what you're there in university for. Yes, it may not be of the same richness and all that you have in the professional workspace, but that's it's a university. I mean, so it's meant to start you off, right? So make sure that you know how to work with data. Make sure you know your fundamental algorithms, regardless of which language you choose, because the languages will come and go.
Mm.
Um, and for God's sake, learn a little bit about hardware because I always felt this is like, software engineers were zero in this. And I thought it was a very required, appreciation of that space that you should have. It'll help you and learn something about networks. And today, you also have to learn about security across layers. Uh, Cloud, I think you grow up with it, so no big deal. But these are this is fundamental. Then you go on to what is front end, back end, middleware, this, that, all that, all the paradigms, and you learn. You get in, and the employer is waiting for someone who will learn, right?
Okay.
So they will you'll get into it. So don't worry about trying to master everything. If you have on your own gone ahead of your class and you had access to some environment where you could build things and all, that's great. um, I would say that would be my starting advice, and don't be so scared of it, and just get in and then go with the flow, because the other things that are required today, which weren't so necessary a long time ago, is adaptability, communication skills, learn how to interact with other people because you're going to be doing that a lot more than in the past. Um, you know, try and, read up on industries. Slowly, that will, give you some appreciation of business. Which is also something I think not IT, it's every branch of engineering should be made to learn something about business and economics, market economics, supply and demand, revenue, profit and cost, and the fundamentals of company value. And therefore, I mean, when the customer says he values something, right? I mean, don't argue with him on something that doesn't make sense. Simply because you don't understand business. So you don't want to be in that position. I think people have to become both generalist as well as specialist moving forward. I don't think it's a choice of one. I mean, yeah, after a while you become, better at something. But I think you have to be very open today. So that would be my guidance to youngsters. Don't worry so much about exactly what degree are you getting in IT. It doesn't matter. Um, so, and for the people in the middle layer, or middle sort of midpoint of career, I think see, to some extent, change has always been there. It's not like change is something new. I think the appreciation that has to be picked up um, is the rate or the pace of change. It has accelerated. It has accelerated because it's being driven by the digital platform companies and the AI companies. All of them are putting things together at such a humongous rate. So I think the choices are if you're very deep in a domain side of things, that's good, but try and develop at least a starting appreciation of the parts of the landscape in technology. If not, if you think it's too hard to get into individual technologies at this stage and there's too much work and no time to do all that, okay, but you have to then understand where the jobs are, where job continuity is going to be, and do at least the minimum that you can. And if you're already very technical, great. It becomes if you can stick to a product space or a domain space, rather than moving from one to another. This era of saying that I've worked in 10 different domains, and I think that is maybe it's not that it's zero value, but I think in terms of demand for the future, that's become a little commoditized as well. And you have to be able to say, I have worked, say, in hospital applications for the past 10 years of my career. It would be nice, maybe even 3 years, but provided you continue in that area. And then, got everything else about the quality mindset, getting things out fast, business economics. If you can't do any of the above, understand market forces like anyone. Because I think in software, this was another observation I had. I didn't hear that, holistic description of business, all its various angles and all. I hardly ever heard it come out of anyone. If you say business, they thought you meant sales.
Okay.
They didn't even think marketing. They thought sales. So that I found a bit, there's a gap. And I thought, okay, there may be a reason why it's not propagated in the culture, but I thought it would be useful if people understood a little more about market forces,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I think if people in the middle, if they don't already have it,
Mm.
try to do it, because that would then give you new ideas
Mhm.
about what to do. Because see, right now you don't know what to do because you don't fully understand certain angles, right? If you did, maybe your choices would become more visible to you. So I think, from a general kind of thing, this is what I would say, and then you get into the specifics of each person's,
Sure.
background.
Yeah.
But I think learning is it's something non-negotiable for everybody in every level. To that you have to keep learning more than ever. In the past, you have to keep learning because otherwise you'll be left behind. I think it's
Yeah, very nice. I thought that was the last question, and we have kind of overshot the time, but I have to ask one more question. Since you mentioned retirement a couple of times, for someone who has been very active and then getting into new areas, picking things up and doing things, did you have to prepare for retirement, or just that happened, or how are you feeling comfortable with retirement?
um, at the moment I'm feeling very comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, I think, see, again, for everybody it's different. I think for me, one reason, see, because I told you in the beginning, I mean, throughout my career, I felt like a misfit, right? This is a profession. Once I've decided this is what I have to do, then do it properly, right? If you don't like it, it's a different thing, but it doesn't change what you need to do, right? So I think maybe because of that, you're looking forward to the point where can I get off? Stop this, right? And yeah, I mean, you plan and all, but one day the day will come when you think, look, regardless of anything, I don't want to do this anymore,
Yeah.
right? I've had enough, and I'd like to get off, and then that's what it is. So um, I think in my case it was more like that because IT was something I did. It was never a passion ever. It's something that I chose to do. That if I'm in it, I will learn and I will compete with whoever is out there. That is an attitude, so, but it's different from passion.
So on that note, thanks a lot, Mario, for sharing your experience and perspectives. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much again for having me, Sadhguru. It's been wonderful talking to you.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.